to the Dr. Riley Show. I'm your host, Dr. Anissa Riley. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to the Ask Dr. Riley Show. I'm your host, Dr. Anissa Riley, and this season we're talking about something that the world seems to struggle with. Well, some of us do. But this season we're talking about identity. Yes, you heard me. ID. Identity, did it? Did you see what I just did there? Well, even if you didn't, just know that as we talk about identity this season, I want you to lean in. I want you to take a moment to stop and think about your identity in the sense of who am I? Where am I? What am I? What am I? Yeah, that one too. But anyway, tonight's guest is someone who I believe you all will have a really good opportunity to stop and consider about yourself, about your identity. Her name is Raquel Sade, and she has a lot to say. You see what I did there again? Yeah, Raquel Sade got a lot to say. Okay, yes, I'm older, and if you thought that was corny, no, I'll just say bars. Well, anyway, welcome, Miss Raquel. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Very excited.
But with that being said, we're going to start off by asking a simple question. A question that I like to ask all my guests when we are starting a theme, and the theme is identity. So the first question is, what does identity mean to you?
So that's always, like you said, a tough question to really answer. I feel like because with the world and right now, I feel like we kind of identify ourselves with things that we kind of need to change or adjust. But obviously, like I'm a Black woman, African American, have Caribbean roots, from Mount Vernon, New York. So I'm 24. Yeah, I'm 24 years old. But I think that identity is shaped by it can be by your traumas, it can be by just your life experience as a whole, I think. And where you came from, your upbringing is what shapes your identity as a whole. And personally, I'm trying to not stick with my identity, like in terms of who I thought I was, because that can keep you in a box and keep you stuck in trauma or stuck in a place where you're actually trying to elevate from, if that makes sense.
Oh, that made a whole lot of sense. And you just gave a whole lot of information. But before we unpack everything that you just said, I want to go back to something because our viewers may not be very sure or clear on what we mean when we say the world. Because I said the world too, and then you said the world. So what do you mean when you say, because the world, ...
So the world, I define it as, or I would say, it is defined as a system, like a system in which people run by, a common system that I feel like is probably ran by evil structures, and not probably, but is very heavily ran by evil structures and evil systems. And it's easy to conform to because that is what the norm is.
Okay.
And that's what I consider the world, just the system.
The system, or the man, right? People say that.
Or the spirit that's running
realm.
the man.
No, it's the spirit that's running the man.
Right.
And I would like to add on to that, and probably in the simplest terms, what I would add to what you were just saying is society, culture.
Right.
The way that society believes things should happen, the way that culture is run on a global scale.
Right.
Not so much like the culture of your home or the culture that you're from, but the way in which the global norm is considered the right, and I'll put that in air quotes, way to go.
Right.
All right. So now that our audience kind of can attach to the words that we're using, I would like to kind of unpack what you said around identity because you talked about demographics, you talked about ethnicity, you talked about your environment, and I think a lot of people think identity is just that. But then you said something. I don't know if y'all heard it, but you said trauma. We can be identified by our traumas. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I'm really curious. What did you mean?
So because a lot of times, especially growing up like in middle school and just being young, that is where you're being molded. And a lot of things stick with us. You know that term when we say our inner child and stuff. And that's actually a true thing. I feel like a lot of us as human beings tend to frame our worlds based off of how we were formed as a child. And in times when you don't really know who you are, the world is kind of telling you who you are. They're like people in school could say, oh, your nose is big, or you're mad skinny, like, oh, your hair is nappy. So now you're growing up saying, oh, I don't really have good hair, or I don't really like my hair. So you put on a wig. And that forms, nothing's wrong with the wig, of course, but that is something that helps to form or shape your identity, because now you're masking an insecurity or a trauma that was placed by the next person or an outside source, and that shaped who you are now. Even for an example, like if growing up in a single family household and you're like, oh, I'm a single woman, I love being single, you know, I'm not looking for nobody, I'm independent, like, and that forms your identity. I'm an independent woman, I can do all bad by myself kind of thing, because you have trauma from relationships. So that's really what I would say by like trauma forming who you are now as an adult.
There is hope. Share your thoughts.
Talk to us.
Be a lifeline.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
Well, I'm looking good. Thank you. Just became a real ID. What's the plan? Impromptu road trip? Actually, the plan is to fly to New York for today's product launch, and then visit the family in California and cap it off with a girls' weekend in New Orleans. You really can just do all that. Sure, I'm a real ID, so I'm good to board any domestic flight. Speaking of which, gotta fly. Nice, enjoy. I'll be here.
Be your real ID self by May 7th, 2025. Find out how at tsa.gov/realid.
So as you were talking, I heard you talk about all of these external things that happen. You know, I'm single. You got nappy hair. I don't got nappy hair. I mean, well, I don't have nappy hair. But nappy hair is cool hair because I don't call it nappy. I call it African curls.
Right.
Right. You know, because when, you know, you from that continent or you from that area, your hair is curly.
Right.
So they ain't naps.
Yeah.
They curls.
They are.
And I also would say, you know, my hair is magical because it defies gravity.
Right.
You know, because I can pick my hair and it'll stay up. Other people here, they try to pick it up, it's going to fall right down. Because you ain't got the gravity-defying hair. But anyway, I digress. That's part of my identity. But anyway, we talked about all these external things, your hair, your looks, your facial features. But then you connected it to masking stuff that's happening on the inside. So help our audience connect what happens on the inside and why does what's happening on the outside, and how does that affect the inside, and how do you reconcile those two? Because you sound like you've been through some stuff that happened on the outside, but then the inside was affected. So can you connect that for us?
Yeah. Yes. I, as a child, I would say like externally, to the outside world, I probably grew up in a, you know, a great household, a great life. It wasn't too harsh compared to where I'm from. Like, because being from Mount Vernon is the hood, but I didn't grow up in a household that operated in that like mindset, because poverty is a mindset. And so although we didn't have everything, we were, grew up middle class, but I did grow up in a single family household. I grew up with my grandparents, but I lived with my mother and my grandparents. My mom had me at 19. So externally, it didn't look so bad, but I would say just growing up in a single family household, and I felt like with my other side of the family, like my father's side of the family, they kind of had their ways of making me feel like the black sheep without them recognizing it, only because they grew up fatherless. So to them, I didn't grow up fatherless because that's my father's side of the family. And they would see me in my grandmother's house because my father also lived with my grandmother. So they would see me in my grandmother's house and say, okay, you have a dad, so I don't really have to give you as much care or nurture and instill as much like love into you, as much as they don't really realize it, because they were formed by their traumas as well. So just being a black sheep in that environment, then going to school and always being a black sheep at school, and I could never fit in too much. I didn't try to fit in, but even with friends, like people always, betrayed me. Middle school was definitely rough, like fights and bullying and just overall disrespect. Down to high school, I still was a black sheep it was a little bit better, but it was still definitely like, you here, but you're not really us for real. And especially because I left Mount Vernon and I moved to another city. So then that also, on top of that, was like, you're not really a part of us for real. And I just always have been singled out. But I personally believe the reason why I was singled out, at least in school and those environments, was because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And instead of helping to nurture that, it was kind of like, oh, now I need to tear that down, because they also are formed by their traumas, which created insecurity in them. And they saw something in me that I didn't see. So instead of complementing that or adding to it, they decide to tear it down because...
But let me pause you there, because you said something more than once. Two things you said more than once. You used this word formed, right? So in the beginning you said the way it was formed, and they were formed by the traumas. And then you decided or chose to or said the phrase black sheep. So how do you get from formed, which seems to be like a really cool word, like I formed you, I formed this, and like from an inventor or creation standpoint, but then you connect it to this phrase black sheep, which in society, which in the world is really negative phrasing. So as much as you're using this word formed, which everyone's like, I formed it, right? And you get woo, but then you juxtapose it to black sheep. Like, explain that. Once again, formed is something like maybe on the inside, and black sheep is something people on the outside. Like, there's this rub that's happening. Can you go into a little bit more?
So I say the word formed because it's the outside, like the outside factors, like how people treat you, or just your situation. And I feel like, we all go through things, and hurt people. So because they were framed, the way they were framed, or the way they were developed or built up, like through their family or their environment, their household, those different things help to form who they were.
Let me pause you. Let's turn it on you. Because you're talking about other people, right? What about you? Because this is about identity, right?
Yeah. So I became very insecure And that was just because, like I said before, like people saw something that I didn't see in myself at the time, and they made it a point to make sure that I didn't feel comfortable. And it eventually formed into like looks and stuff like that, which became my identity and with insecurity. But my insecurity was mainly like, is something wrong with me? Like, why can't I seem to gain friends like my entire life? Like, to this point in my life right now, I probably have like, I can count my friends on my hand. And friends, I use that term loosely. But yeah, I just always thought something was wrong with me because nobody accepted me. Looking at it now, it's a blessing that they didn't accept me, and it was actually God's protection because he was showing me that I was made to set apart because he has plans for me. But at the time, it definitely didn't feel like that. And because I thought...
Wait, hold up. Hold up. Because I know my audience is like, what do you mean? You didn't want to be accepted. Everybody wants to be accepted.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have someone who they can say, I'm part of community. Community is important. And you brought God into it. And God says, it ain't good for men to be alone. And then you said, separation. Nobody wants to be separated.
Right.
So how do you get from this place of what's wrong with me to it's good to be separated? That you gotta work through that with us for our viewers. You have to.
In Iraq, our truck hit a roadside bomb. I had about 16 surgeries on my hand so that I could regain function. And when I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm. And I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. And it's good to know that when we come home, there are people who are there that care about us. Operation Homefront, they've really been a blessing.
The great thing about a hearing check? No one makes you drink weird stuff, or drills your teeth, or dilates your eyes. It's just soothing me time in a quiet booth. Then bam, you can do the happy dance, because you're all done.
Untreated hearing loss puts you at greater risk for depression and anxiety. So what's holding you back? Let's see a hearing professional and get those ears checked. And let's dance.
So I'm not gonna lie, that mindset came recently when me actually accepting that I was separated for a reason and actually being happy with being separated. I would say for like 20 years of my life, I hated being alone. I was a loner, but I hated it at the same time. And the reason why I say like separation was good was because of my environment. My environment wasn't a healthy one. And if I chose to try to fit in with those crowds, if I chose to try to fit in with like, you know, people that were quote unquote close to me or in my close in proximity, I don't think I would be the person I am today. I think it was instilling integrity and just being comfortable with who I am. Because I never really had that problem of trying to like be something I wasn't. Because I never got too close to people to even try to morph into them, if you get what I'm saying. Because especially being young, you are shaped by, or can be shaped by your friends and your friends' tendencies and what they like to do and stuff like that. So I think it was just instilling in me the integrity to be able to stand on who I am in every single environment and be strong in that.
But I'm going to stop you because, you know, adolescents, teenagers, middle schoolers, that's where you do begin to figure out who you are. And as you so rightfully and clearly stated, you know, when you're around people, you begin to get shaped by other people's tendencies. So you were a loner, right? You didn't fit in. as you say, where did you get the opportunity to look at, to decide, to see who Raquel really is? Because you weren't with anyone. You didn't fit into anything. So how did you know to stand on who you were if you really didn't know who you were, because you didn't have anything to measure it by? There wasn't a measuring stick. There weren't any friends around. You were by yourself. So how you know who you was at that age?
I would say my mother. Because that's the only person I had to complain to. So like it was me and my mom. That was it, me and my mother. And my mom was a gangster, I'm not gonna lie. So
what up?
So
riding on the tubes.
Yeah, so she wasn't accepting any of that woe is me pity party, like, oh, I don't understand why nobody loves me, like I'm just so weird, or what's wrong with me, and like am I doing something wrong? And she would just always let me know that like you are different, and that's why you're not going to fit in, because people see that you're different. And she had me understand that like I'm not going to fit in, and that's okay. Stop trying to expect that. And I think it's the expectation that would keep people, or keep myself, obsessed with that. You know, because everybody expects to at least fit in at some point in their life. And if you keep holding on to that expectation on wanting to be a part of something and you never receive that, you know, that will grow a huge void in your life. And that did happen. But the reassurance, like she just had to constantly tell me like, it's not for you, get over it. Like, no, seriously, literally get over it. It's not for you.
So what do you tell young ladies who may be in the same situation that you are in, where they don't fit in, even young gentlemen, they don't fit in, they are feeling awkward, feeling like they're the black sheep, but they don't have a mom like you have. They don't have a mom who is constantly reassuring them. They don't have anyone. I mean, they're literally in this place and space by themselves. Like, what would you say to those teenagers, those middle schoolers that are trying to figure it out?
I would say to them, I know it hurts right now. I know it doesn't feel comfortable right now, but the best thing in life to get you growing is to remain uncomfortable. And when you are too comfortable, that's actually a sign that it's time for you to move. So I would say that no matter how you feel right now in this moment, take that time and use it to your benefit. Take that time of being alone to learn you, to learn what you love, to learn who makes you you, and you use that to expand and help build other people. Because a lot of the times I had to realize too, like my life story was to help the next person who was also going through the same thing. So you just got to figure out who you are, what you love to do, what makes you happy, and forget everybody else. Because at the end of the day, if you keep trying to fit in with everybody else, you're going to be stuck just with everybody else. And the benefit of being alone is that you have more time to cultivate you, cultivate who you are in spirit, cultivate who you are in habit, and be able to live that out in fruition and in the fullness of who you truly are, and not having to be tainted by society or be tainted by your friends or people that you would at least want to be around. Like it's like you're actually skipping, like it's actually a benefit, because you're skipping that process of like having an identity crisis. And I feel like you only really go through an identity crisis when you don't know who you are. That's because you spent so much time consumed with everybody else that you haven't even figured yourself out. And identity crisis, they can deter your life and make you have decisions and do things that can actually ruin your life, or make an even bigger trauma than what was already there. So I would just say, figure out who you are alone and use that time so that you have that benefit of knowing who you are in a world that is lost. And like the Bible says, like Jesus has come to give us life and life more abundantly. And people think where they're living in right now, they only feel good in the temporary. Like, they don't feel good throughout the whole day. Like the Instagram, it's the highlight. For an example, like those 10 pictures you taken for 10 minutes gives you satisfaction for 10 minutes. And then when you post it, it gives you the satisfaction for the little hours blowing up. But once that's gone, you're looking for the next fix. So it's like...
Yo, did y'all hear that? That's like some straight... Oh, well, in my day, it was crack. You know,
No,
crack.
seriously.
That's like Instagram is the new crack.
It is.